Suppose he has a point. Dear NASA, my current size and weight would help keep fuel costs down. So the previous presentation, we introduced you to the overall Apollo program. And the Apollo program has recently experienced its 50th anniversary. And we're going to take a look at the first Apollo mission that was slated for human occupancy. The three crew member names that you'll want to jot down are Grissom. You might recognize him from the Gemini days. He flew aboard the first Gemini Titan launch with John Young, the unsinkable Molly Brown. Ed White might jog a memory of yours that he's the first U.S. astronaut to do a spacewalk. And Roger Chaffee, he was a rookie for this mission, and this is the Apollo 1 mission. So Gus, as he was more commonly known by, Grissom, White, and Chaffee. So they were conducting a training session where they would essentially run through what might be called, compared to a dress rehearsal, where they do essentially everything but blast off from the launch pad, run through and check that everything is working, practicing the recovery once the capsule would land on the ocean surface. So all the astronauts would go through this for part of their mission training. So here's Chaffee, White, and Grissom, and this is on that test launch or test practice day. They weren't actually going to launch, just run through all the procedures, make sure everything was in working order. And unfortunately, there was an electrical short in the Apollo capsule, and the electrical short created a spark that, because the cabin was being filled with oxygen, pure oxygen for the astronauts to be able to breathe, as you probably well know, oxygen is incredibly flammable, and that electric spark created a fire inside the capsule. And the hatches on these capsules were always designed to be opened from the outside, when you would be in the ocean and the Navy SEALs would come and open up the hatch from the outside. So there was actually no means for the gentlemen to be able to escape from the capsule on launch pad. And it was just one of those unfortunate oversights that there had never been problems on the launch pad before. You're always thinking about safety when the astronauts are in space, heading to the moon, on the moon, coming back from the moon, and it is a horrible, horrible, tragic event that, as hard as they tried to quickly get to the capsule and try and open that hatch, unfortunately, all three gentlemen had perished. And this is the capsule after the accident. So sad. In your notebook, you're going to record that this is our first U.S. space launch pad disaster. It's the first loss of astronauts while training for a mission. And that's not taking anything away from the test pilots or NASA astronauts who were flying from one location to another and perished in part of the Gemini program. But this was a crew of astronauts that perished in the realm of an active space mission. So we do want you to record the date of 27 January 1967. This definitely put a halt to the pressure to get to the moon before the end of the decade, before 1969, 1970. And rightfully so. You're not going to put human lives before a political propaganda deadline. I mean, it is a presidential country goal, but human lives of the utmost importance. So there was incredible overhaul of safety regimes with the Saturn V and a launch escape mechanism was created. So the loss of Ed White, Gus Grissom, and Roger Chaffee, sorry. And this is bittersweet in the sense that Grissom passed away before his Liberty Bell 7 capsule was recovered, and he'd have been able to have some personal redemption that he didn't blow the hatch as NASA thought he had. When the first Mars rover landed on Mars, the rover rolls out, and on these hills, they called these the Chaffee Hill, the Grissom Hill, and the White Hill. Now, these little hills are just that, hills. You're not thinking Rocky Mountain range here. So this was part of the display that I was able to see for the recovery of the Liberty Bell 7. The conquest of space is worth the risk of life, and all the astronauts are aware of this as they approach their duties, their job, and their dream. So part of the tribute that was by the Liberty Bell 7, receiving the Medal of Service for NASA there. This is an improvement on the launch escape system. This was not present on the Apollo 1 test run. But what this would do is, if there was any type of a problem, this would act as a mini rocket, and the capsule would be able to take the astronauts away from any type of dangerous situation on launch pad. So a new configuration sitting atop the Saturn V. You have your first automated crewless docking, so a docking that occurs all computer-driven from Earth, from ground-based means. And you might see the design looks very Soviet in nature, as it is, Cosmos 186 and Cosmos 188. We're starting a new section of your race count here. This one goes to the Soviet Union for the automated crewless docking. Also, at this time, first animals and plants to leave Earth's orbit to travel to and circle the moon, and first moon mission with passengers to return safely to Earth, and these passengers were tortoises. What do you think, U.S. and all their efforts of Apollo and focus to get to the moon, or was this Soviet? What do you think? By the way, the capsule here was named Zonde 5, so yes, Soviet. So not only is the United States dealing with the tragic loss of the astronauts from Apollo 1 and the intentional and needed slowdown to rectify and make sure that situation wouldn't occur again, we have the Soviets still kind of driving it in that they are making great accomplishments still. So we have several Saturn test missions where it's unmanned vehicles, some just the launch pad run through that are unmanned. And so we go from Apollo 1 to Apollo 7. 2 through 6 were these unmanned tests, similar to how the Gemini program, the first couple launches were unmanned. So the next crewed mission was the Apollo 7. And this has the astronauts of Wally Schirra, Don Eisel, and Walter Cunningham. You just need to have the surnames, last names of Eisel, Schirra, Cunningham. And this happens to be the first manned mission. They do launch successfully, orbit the Earth in a Saturn V. And the first time a live TV broadcast from space. With this mission, Wally Schirra creates a bit of a legend for himself. You see what is so special about this mission? You'll see here Wally Schirra as a Mercury 7 astronaut. Here he is as part of Gemini 6, a Gemini astronaut, and an Apollo mission, part of Apollo 7. Wally Schirra is the only astronaut who served on the Apollo, the Gemini, and the Apollo programs for NASA. We also, with the Apollo 7 mission, have the return of our friend Gunther Wendt.
Gunther Wendt.
The situation here was that Wally Schirra was absolutely insistent that Gunther Wendt return as the launch pad manager for Apollo because he was so incredible during the Mercury program. During the Gemini program, he had been rehired hired by a different company, so he wasn't as involved on the launch pad. But Schirra was absolutely adamant about it, and he did persuade Deke Slayton, who was the chief astronaut, made all the assignments, and he managed to get Gunther Wendt to leave McDonald and come under North American management, and so he did remain as the pad leader from there on out for the entire Apollo program. And this Apollo 7 mission really brings Gunther Wendt to public fame or public recognition, because as Wendt's face was the last one astronauts would always see for the Mercury and now the Apollo programs, aisles on this mission, once Gunther Wendt shuts the hatch, Isle turns over and he says, "I wonder where Gunther Wendt." So that's the reason I was very glad when Air Redmond confirmed that was the correct pronunciation of Gunther Wendt, so that it is even more funny with the "I wonder where."
Gunther Wendt.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Gunther Wendt.
Here's a snippet from their first live broadcast from space. Keep those cards and letters coming in, folks. This is first time ever captured on film, a manned Saturn V separation of that first stage. And this is just awesome about Willie Schirra. So, spewing flames, the Apollo 7 gathers speed as it climbs into the Florida sky. All three crew members professed excitement at takeoff, but the pulse of veteran Schirra, the first and only astronaut to pilot Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo spacecraft, registered only 87 beats per minute, which is quite incredible when you are sitting on this level of an explosive device. After 7 comes 8, the Apollo 8 mission. See if you can figure out from the mission patch what their objective was. So the Apollo 8 mission, showing that they are going to be the first humans to make a lap around the moon. So you want to jot down the astronaut names. We have Borman, Anders, and Lovell. And of course you want to add to that the first mission to make a lap to the moon and back. Borman, Anders, Lovell. In your Alpha Mix Appendix, we have EGO for high Earth orbit, LEO low Earth orbit. Just want to get you a sense of scale of how far these gentlemen are traveling. It'll put the penultimate Gemini mission to shame. The Gemini mission went about 150 miles above the Earth's surface, which is a stunning accomplishment for them. But the Apollo 8 crew are going to go well beyond this high Earth orbit. And in fact, in this scaled image here, they're going to be going well beyond high Earth orbit. They are going well into this lunar orbit. So this is an incredible journey. They're going 250,000 miles, essentially. That is quite the achievement. So the Apollo 8 crew are the first piloted orbital mission of another celestial body. So the first human crew to make an orbit around something other than the Earth. So that is a good solid check for the United States. And just take a look at what it was like to be in an Apollo capsule. Yikes. What I'd like to show you now is a little clip of the launch of a Saturn V, so you can get a sense and idea of what that was like, and then show you some footage from the Apollo 8 mission that absolutely only the Apollo 8 mission could have provided at this time. Very, very compelling imagery to follow.
10, 9, we have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have cleared the tower.
Apollo 8, Houston. Go ahead, Houston. Apollo 8, you are go for TLI. Over. Roger, understand. We're go for TLI. Show you the Earth. It's a beautiful, beautiful view with predominantly blue background and just huge covers of white clouds. Apollo 8, Houston, 1 minute to LOS. All systems go. Thanks a lot, Trips. We'll see you on the other side.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, that's pretty. You got a color film, Jim? Hand me a roll of color quick. Oh man, that's great. Where is it? Quick. Huh? Take several. There's several of here. Wait a minute, let's get the right setting here. Calm down, Bubba. Well, I got it right. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. 250 at F11.
Most definitely a beautiful shot. So you have an Earthrise that you just saw. And an exceptionally brilliant photo of the moon captured by the Apollo 8 crew. Wonderfully successful mission. They were honored as Men Time of the Year, or Time Magazine's Men of the Year. And their faces adorn the cover with the moon. And on an anniversary photo opportunity, we have Anders, Borman, and Lovell from Apollo 8. This was the first time that humans traveled to the moon and back. They didn't walk on the surface of the moon, but they traveled to the moon and back. They orbited the moon. They went around it 10 times, so experienced 10 Earthrises, and they saw the far side of the moon. Bill Anders summed it up: "We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing is that we discovered the Earth." So things are definitely progressing forward to accomplishing walking on the moon. The first docking between two crewed spacecraft in Earth orbit, also the first crew exchange in space, occurs January 1969, and that does go to the Soviet Union. So in the Gemini program, we had rendezvoused with the Agena target vehicle, but we hadn't rendezvoused with a docking of two different crewed vessels and then exchanged crews. So that is back to the Soviets there.